Ellis was sitting on the staircase of the old schoolhouse. She was covered in sweat and the afternoon sun was pouring in through the glass behind her. The female ran her sleeve across her forehead to try and wipe away some of the sweat, proceeding to reach to her side and grab a water bottle she'd brought with her, and took a long sip from it. The female had been less social since they'd gotten back from finding Doc. She'd been trying to keep herself busy to distract herself from all those emotions and questions bubbling inside of her. Sword had always been an overly emotional person, and she knew that. It hurt when she thought of how little she trusted people, and yet she couldn't stop herself from doubting anyone who gave her a reason to, and even those who didn't. Pursing her lips after pulling the bottle away, the human let out an exhausted breath and closed her eyes, laying back and taking in a deep breath to calm her racing heart. The previous day she'd decided that she'd start doing things which were still productive, but allowed her to have time to herself if she really needed it. When she woke up, the girl would completely skip breakfast, so she had no excuse to be around when the other heroes woke up, and she would go to train Scroll. He'd been so chaotic since following her back, so of course no one would complain if she went hours training him to behave. She'd spent 3 hours the previous day and 2 that morning training the massive griffin. Then, to avoid going back to the house, she instantly went to the training hall. Ellis had debated whether or not to get Oscar to see if he wanted to train with her, but in all honesty she felt guilty for their conversation the night they found Doc. She'd bluntly told him that she didn't trust him, that she thought he would abandon her. Despite being true, she felt horrible for voicing that worry of hers. The girl raised her left arm and placed it over her face. Her nose nuzzled into her elbow, while the upper arm rested on her left eye, and forearm on the right, blocking out the light which made her squint beforehand. How could everything go so badly, so quickly? This was the first moment she'd really given herself time to process the events of the last week. She thought about how bright things had looked that morning when she was training with Oscar for the first time, how things progressed that dinner, and got to learn more about him. How could she have said such horrible things after he opened up to her like that? The guilt weighed heavy on her heart as Ellis let out a shaky sigh in the silence of the training hall. Then there was Raina. In all honesty, she'd looked up to the blonde-haired woman since they'd first become friends. She looked up to a lot of the heroes. She looked up to Noelle, Marlin, Raina, Zunil. Hell, she even thought Doc was a pretty awesome gal when they first started planning that bomb run mission. The more names Ellis listed off in her own head, the worse she felt. Noelle was working with the darkness. Marlin was still on her side, but she let him down. She broke her promise. She'd promised multiple times that she wouldn't let him down, and then she did. Raina. Ellis wanted to trust her with every fibre of her being, but there was always that little doubt in the back of her mind telling her that she should assume the worst so she wouldn't be disappointed. There was that worry, that distrust that was locked inside of her soul that wouldn't allow her to trust Raina. Not yet, at least. Zunil was Ellis's first friend here. He was the first one she'd really felt comfortable talking to in the training grounds after being summoned by Marlin and still being in a confused state. He made her feel like the chaos she'd been plopped into was normal. In the midst of the confusion, his energy, his friendship, his support, it really held Sword in a way she'd never voiced before, and the regret of not telling him that plagued her mind. She felt tears beginning to form in her eyes as she remembered their last encounter. He wasn't coming back. He wasn't a part of the heroes anymore. He wouldn't be there every morning to talk to them about technology. He wouldn't be there to joke around with. He wouldn't be there to have her back when no one else would. The tears continued to trickle down the girl's face, only visible from the side since her arm still covered her eyes, and the fabric of her sleeve absorbed most of the tears. A gentle sniffle echoed through the hall, as Ellis allowed herself to let out all of the sorrow she felt. The regret, the anger, the confusion, all of it. The girl knew keeping it in would make things worse and cloud her judgment, so letting it out was the best thing to do, even if it didn't seem like it to anyone else. But that was the good thing about this place. No one else needed to know. Sword then thought about what Marlin had said to them before they left to find Doc. She'd never even thought to ask Noelle about his past experiences. Hell, she didn't even know anything about the previous war, apart from the fact that it happened. She thought about how she didn't really know much of anything, and how useless she was as a result. Knowledge was power, and when she looked at herself, she was so weak because she had no knowledge. She didn't know about the Lost War, she didn't know about the darkness, she didn't know anything. Maybe it was time for that to change. She failed to keep her promise to Marlin once, but she had to do everything in her power to make up for that mistake. I bet Faye would have asked way more questions if she were here. Shanna would have analysed everything. I really can't do anything without them, she whispered, her voice breaking towards the end of her sentence. Gulping down the lump in her throat, Ellis took a deep breath and sat up, sniffling and wiping away the remaining of her tears, feeling more replaced as a result. The girl released another deep breath to try and calm her racing heart. Marlin had promised they would talk. He was the top guy of this place as far as the girl could tell, so surely he would be the best person to talk to if she wanted answers. She definitely didn't feel comfortable enough to go talk to Noelle about it right now, and all of the heroes in general just seemed in disarray. Jean probably wouldn't know anything either. Ellis sat there for a while, giving her enough time to let out all of her tears, until she could cry no more. She drank the rest of her water, before returning to the home she and the heroes had been staying in, both to clean herself up and change into something a little more comfortable. Hopefully she would get a chance to talk to Marlin sometime soon.